Chapter 1. Tweet, tweet. Jack sat up in bed. He stared out his window. The sky was dark gray. The sun would be rising soon. It's almost time, he whispered to himself. The day before, in the 매직트리하우스, Morgan's note had said, "Come back tomorrow in the early morning." Jack jumped out of bed. He put on his jeans and t-shirt. Then he grabbed his backpack and crept out into the hall. Jack peeked into Annie's room. She wasn't there. He slipped downstairs and out the front door. Annie was sitting on the porch steps. Jack sat down beside her. "What are you doing?" he asked. "I was waiting for the birds to start singing," said Annie. "Then I was going to wake you up." Jack and Annie watched the sky go from dark gray to light gray. Then the birds began their song. "Tweet, tweet," said Annie. Without another word, Jack and Annie left their porch. They headed up their street to the Frog Creek woods. It was cool beneath the trees. Jack and Annie hurried through the woods to the rope ladder. It hung from the tallest oak. At the top of the oak was the 매직트리하우스. They climbed up into the treehouse. It was barely light inside. Annie picked up the note lying on the floor. She held it up to the window and read aloud. "Dear Jack and Annie, Camelot is in trouble. To save the kingdom, please find these 4 special kinds of writing from my library. Something to follow, something to send, something to learn, something to lend. Thank you, Morgan." Jack took a deep breath. "Okay," he said. "We have our first special writing, a list from the Civil War." "We have the second," said Annie, "a letter from the Revolutionary War." "We have the third," said Jack, "a poem from a pioneer schoolhouse." "Now we just need one more," said Annie. "I wonder why we have to find these special writings for Morgan's library," said Jack. "How are they going to save Camelot?" "I don't know," said Annie, "but let's get going so we can solve the mystery. Where's our research book?" They looked around the treehouse. Their Pennsylvania book, the book that always brought them home, was lying in the corner. Beside it was another book. Annie picked it up. "This is it," she said softly. She showed the book's cover to Jack. It said, "San Francisco, California, 1906." "California," said Jack. "I've always wanted to go to California." "Me too," said Annie. She laughed. "I guess I told Miss Lily the truth after all." "Yeah," said Jack, smiling. The 매직트리하우스 had taken them to a pioneer school in their last adventure. There Annie had told the teacher, Miss Neely, that they were on their way to California. Annie pointed at the cover of the California book. "We really wish we could go there," she said. The wind started to blow. The treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still, absolutely still. Chapter 2. Thunder Under the Ground. "Nice clothes," said Annie. Jack opened his eyes. Annie was wearing a blue and white dress with a big sailor collar and white stockings. Jack was wearing brown knee-length pants, a jacket, a cap, and a tie. His backpack had become a leather bag. He and Annie both wore short lace-up boots. A church bell started to ring. Gong, 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 gong. "It rang 5 times," said Jack. "It must be 5 in the morning." "Yeah," said Annie. She was looking out the window. Jack looked with her. The early morning air felt fresh and cool. The treehouse had landed in a tree at the bottom of a hill. Painted wooden houses and gaslights lined a quiet cobblestone street. A trolley car moved along tracks up the street. It landed at the top of the hill and disappeared. The sun was behind them, making pink streaks in the blue sky. It's really pretty here, said Annie. Yeah, said Jack. He opened the research book and read. On Wednesday, April 18th, 1906, San Francisco was the biggest city on the west coast of the United States. It had a population of 500,000 people. It was also one of the loveliest cities in the country. Jack pulled out his notebook. He wrote, San Francisco, April 18th, 1906, biggest city in the West, lovely. Let's go, Annie said impatiently. Jack looked back at the book. He wanted to learn more. Now, said Annie. She took the book and notebook away from him and put them into his letter bag. Let's not waste any more time. Annie left the treehouse. Doing research is not wasting time, Jack called after her. But he slung his bag over his shoulder and followed Annie down the rope ladder. When they had both stepped onto the grass, Jack looked around. Where to? He said. Anywhere, said Annie. Let's just explore and see the sights. We can be tourists. Okay, said Jack. But don't forget we have to find the writing for Morgan's library. They started up the cobblestone street. As they walked up the steep hill, the sun rose above the tall buildings. The early light turned everything to gold. Stones, street lamps, and the glass windows of the silent houses. It's so quiet and peaceful, said Annie. Yeah, everyone must still be sleeping, said Jack. Suddenly, out of the quiet came a deep rumbling noise. Jack stopped. He grabbed Annie's arm. What's that? He said. The noise got louder. It sounded like thunder coming from under the ground. The earth started shaking. Church bells clanged wildly. The whole street began to move. The cobblestones roared like waves on the ocean. What's happening? Annie cried. Chimneys fell off roofs. Gas lights toppled over. Bricks crashed to the street. Get down! Shouted Jack. Cover your head! Jack and Annie crouched on the ground with their arms over their heads. All around them was rumbling, clanging, crashing, and breaking. Then the world grew still. The rumbling stopped. Jack and Annie raised their heads. The air was filled with dust. It's over, said Jack. There must have been an earthquake, said Annie. I think so, Jack agreed. I guess I should have let you do a little more research on this place, Annie said. Yeah, probably, said Jack. Except I don't know exactly what we could have done. Jack slowly stood up. His legs felt wobbly. As he brushed off his pants, the deep rumbling came again, louder than before. Then the treble shaking started. It was even harder than before. Jack was hurt to the ground. The earth trembled and quaked. Jack bounced against the hard cobblestones. Annie! He cried. He tried to stand, but fell again. Through the dusty air, he saw the tall buildings swaying against the sky. Roofs were caving in. Up and down the street, bricks, glass, and concrete showered down. It seemed like a long time before the dreadful noise and shaking finally stopped.